like to call this meeting to order, and first I would like to invite anyone who's in the stands to please come down and join us. We have bleachers here around where the statutory faculty is sitting and the Senate. Please come down, come closer, and we would love your participation in that way. First, I want to thank everyone for being here today. This is one of the most important meetings in the history of our university where we will consider and then vote on our revised Constitution. Before we do that, we have a brief Senate meeting, and I would like to ask the Committee on Courses to come forward and present the curriculum report, which we're required to do by OUS. This is Paul Engelking.
Bring to your attention the curriculum report from the Committee on Courses, the University Committee on Courses. We have a few corrections to it. We'll mark them in red with an asterisk, and then we'll take corrections from the floor. So let's try this. So let's try the first asterisk here and see what happens. Try number 2. Okay, where did the asterisk go? Oh, biology, yes. Yeah, there was a typo, a transposition of numbers. Let's try another one. A few minor corrections to the wording and the physics, 2 physics courses. Let's try another one. Add the words administrative action. Let's try another one. Finance, there was a typo there, transposition of digits. In Finance 316. Let's try another one. In addition to other matters was added concerning a major. And let's try another one. Is that it? That's it. So, are there corrections from the floor? Okay, hearing none, the committee moves that the Senate adopt the curriculum report.
All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Abstain? The report is accepted and will be submitted to OUS.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We want to especially thank you for all the work that you've done in this committee over the years. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Paul. May I hear a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Abstain. This meeting of the Senate is now adjourned. So now we will move directly to the Faculty Assembly. I call this meeting to order, and I would like to make a few opening remarks. It's been quite a 2 weeks, hasn't it? Has anybody ever seen anything like this in your life before? Not quite the same as what we've all experienced as a community. And I think we're actually, although we deeply regret the firing of President LaRiviere, but we're finding new relationships with each other. We're finding new relationships within our own constituencies and across constituencies. And based on the strength of those relationships, and the strength of this new Constitution that we will be considering today, we can move forward in a way that says to the world that this university is strong, it is stable, and it is on a path toward increasing excellence. We must keep our eyes and our hearts on that goal of communicating this message to the public at large, and of course to others in each of our own fields. I would like to share with you some updates, very important updates. Yesterday was quite an active day. We had a meeting, the Senate Executive Committee, with Chancellor Pernsteiner in the morning, which was very positive. And then in the afternoon, a number of us went to Salem to meet with the governor. And after the meeting, we went to the governor's mansion, and he graciously hosted a reception. And we were joined by legislators, including the President of the Senate, and it was a very, very positive interaction with everyone. I have to say, all of us were very impressed with both of these meetings and with the sincerity and authenticity of those who participated and their will to move forward now in light of what we've experienced over the past 2 weeks. I'd like to start on a positive note. As you know, last time we heard from Chancellor Pernsteiner, and let's say there was a range of reactions to his comments. But I'd like to read a message that he sent to me, which he wants me to read to the Faculty Assembly today, because we had a very positive meeting with him. He agreed to have monthly meetings with the Senate Executive Committee, during which he will bring a member, at least one member, of the State Board with him, and perhaps more than one. I spoke with Matt Dunnigan, the chair of the State Board, at the reception following the governor's meeting, and Matt agreed that this would be a good idea and he would work to facilitate it. This is a big step forward. We have never had this kind of continual consultation and interaction. I think it's a vote of confidence in us, too, from both the Chancellor and the State Board. So we have to take it as such and take them at their word that this will be happening on a regular basis. Second, Chancellor Pernsteiner confirmed that he completely supports our involvement in the search design process that will precede the search for a new president, and also strongly supports our involvement and full participation in the search for our new president with representation of faculty and all constituencies. This is another big step forward. As I'm sure you know, previous searches have not had this degree of involvement from all of us. Then third, Chancellor Pernsteiner agreed to write and release a white paper to explain the distribution of funds among the 7 OUS campuses, especially in regard to tuition setting, because there's been a lot of misinformation, disinformation, not exactly anyone's fault, but there have been misunderstandings, let's say, and these need to be clarified. This will be a big step forward in forging new relationships with the other campuses in our system. We really welcome that. I have offered also to speak at the next IFS meeting. I'll be contacting the new president of the IFS, the Interinstitutional Faculty Senate. We really need to be reaching out to the other campuses, and we hope that they will reach out to us. This is a time for forging new relationships throughout the entire system. I would now like to read the email that Chancellor Pernsteiner sent to me. Thank you again for permitting me to meet with the Senate's Executive Committee this morning. I very much appreciated the open dialogue and look forward to continuing these discussions. Please express to the University Assembly tomorrow my deep appreciation for the open collaboration that the Senate Executive Committee and I have had, not only with regard to the presidential transition, but also with respect to important policy and budget issues that will become the subject of continued joint efforts over the next several months. I am convinced that together we can establish an effective search process for a new president for the University of Oregon, but importantly, we also are already engaged in discussions about governance, policy, board interactions, and funding that need to occur as we work together to advance the mission of the University of Oregon and to ensure that the university is a key component of a successful future for our state. I am deeply grateful to you for facilitating such effective and forward-looking communications. Thank you again, George. He really has reached out to us in a new way. We have never seen this before, and I think we have to reach out to him as well. So I would encourage you to go forward now in a really positive way and join with me and join with the Senate to participate in this process. You have my word that in the search process from the Senate, we will be reaching out to the entire campus, all 5 constituencies, to involve everyone as much as possible. And because we have this new relationship with the Chancellor and he will be meeting with us on a regular basis, I will keep you informed about the nature of those meetings and about what is discussed. So let's move forward together on this in spite of our reservations in some ways, but going forward in a positive way at this time will make a huge difference. I'd also like to tell you about the Tuesday meeting with the governor. He expressed his concern for the faculty and for all constituencies. He regretted the situation, such as it has occurred, and he said that he truly wants to give us the tools and resources so that we can achieve our highest goals. He made this very clear, and he wants us to take ownership and be completely engaged in the process for moving forward. I later asked him directly, do we have your word on that? And he gave his word in front of all those who were there, 10 of us from the University of Oregon and legislators, as well as his staff. He reinforced that he wants our involvement and full participation, especially in regard to establishing independent boards and developing new funding models. And he cited OHSU as a model. And he also said that he had developed this model in collaboration with many people during his previous administration. So he understands from an inside view what this is about, having established and then worked to maintain OHSU over the years. And he thought that this would be a helpful model for the University of Oregon as we move forward. I thought that that was very hopeful that he brought that up and that he connected his involvement over the years. It's not just some kind of a new idea that he has, but it's something that he's been working on for quite a while and now wants to extend that to us, and I'm assuming to the entire system in whatever way is appropriate. He then made a statement which I'd really like you to hear clearly. He referred to us as a full partner in moving the system forward. Now, that's the first time we've ever heard that, and that is a step forward, especially when it's said in a gathering of individuals from this university, myself included as representative of all of you, plus Ben Eckstein, president of the student body. But for all of us to hear that with the legislators present is something very powerful indeed. So we take him at his word and we move forward in the most positive way that we possibly can. Regarding the search for the interim president, I can only tell you that things are moving in a very, very positive direction. I can't say any more than that, but we're hoping that there will be an announcement that we will all be cheering on Thursday or Friday. We don't know the exact time, but you can be of good heart because it is moving in the right direction. That's all I really should say publicly about it. Many people have written to me recently and asked what they can do, and I would just like to say this, and please hear this as an appeal to each one of you in a very special way. More than ever, you're needed to make this shared governance system work. This will work or it will not work based on your participation, each and every one of you. Now, you can determine what that is because you're very busy, very, very busy, and I know most of you have an overload of work. But I want you to factor into that as much as you can service, not just to the institution, but to your highest ideals of education, how we can move forward together. We need you to participate. We need you to answer the call to service, whether it be to serve on committees, whether it be to serve within this new formation of the shared governance system. So that's what you can do. It's very direct, very positive, and very active. Also, we need you to foster meaningful and sustainable relationships within your own constituencies, to be more cohesive and stronger within your own units than ever. But perhaps even more than that, to reach across the boundaries of constituencies. It's really important that from the faculty perspective, we understand the needs of our students, of our OAs, our ORs, and our classified staff, because we're really all in this together, and shared governance encourages us in a new way to really work together across the boundaries of our constituencies. So I'd like to ask everybody to take a look within your own unit and outside of your unit and department and see what you can do to foster new relationships across the boundaries of constituencies and really convey to all colleagues in all constituencies how we're in this together, and we now want to find new ways to move forward as a cohesive university community. I believe that our greatest strength is shared governance, and we've been saying we stand with the hat, and I love that banner that you've all seen. I'm going to suggest that maybe we revise the wording slightly, but perhaps keep the hat on the banner. We stand with each other. We need to understand it, and we need to realize it through action. Words are cheap, but action is what we need. We stand with each other. This is our university, and by working closely with each other at all levels, we will attain our highest goals, and we're going to realize and activate our greatest aspirations. So thank you very much for listening. You have my word that I will stay in close touch with all of you about developments related to these important matters that I've just discussed. Now we would like to proceed with the new business related to the Constitution, and first we will have a presentation of the revisions with a question and answer period. Susan Gary and John Bonine will be making this presentation.
Great, thanks. Peter's going to put on screen a one-page look at the revisions of the Constitution, and I think it will be easier to go through this document than to have the Constitution on screen as well. We do have that, and we can put that on screen later. Just by way of background, before we even get to the context that begins that document, quite some years ago, the university governance in the faculty resided in the University Assembly. And the University Assembly at that time had as its members faculty, some number of students, and some OAs. And the Attorney General ruled that that was illegal, that we were actually not permitted to do that because the governance of the university is vested in the faculty. And because the University Assembly had been operating illegally, it meant that the decisions made by that body were at least suspect. So, predating the Constitution that was adopted in 2010, the statutory faculty met and approved a delegation to the Senate of the matters that could be delegated, and then voted to approve the various matters that had been taken before by the University Assembly. But at that time, we concluded that what we needed was a constitution for the University of Oregon. We did not have a constitution. We had a charter, we had some policies, we had a combination of things, but not a document that we could look to that explained the governance by the faculty and the shared governance that exists here between the faculty and the president. So that process began with the appointment of a committee that worked to produce a constitution that was enacted in May of 2010, and that's the current constitution that we have. After that constitution was adopted and signed by the president, it was determined that it would be helpful to have a better articulation of the shared governance system and to provide a process for that shared governance in the Constitution. So the committee began meeting again, we've been meeting for a while, and began working on revisions to the Constitution, and that's what we bring to you today. So before we put a motion on the floor, I want to, with the help of Professor Bonine, just walk through some of the changes. We're not going to walk through the entire document, and we can answer questions on any aspect of it, but I want to point out some of the changes that this document makes to the existing Constitution. One thing, just as a starting point, the kind of idea behind all of this is to create a process that provides for better conversation, discussion, consultation between the faculty and the president. The idea is not to encourage micromanagement of the university by the faculty. I don't think anyone I've talked to on the faculty wants to do that. And the idea is not to set up a system that suggests that the administration should act without consultation with the faculty. This really is about better communication and consultation, and that's a kind of our underlying idea behind all of this. A lot of the changes in the Constitution have to do with the role of the Senate in taking three types of actions. And what the new Constitution does is define the three types of actions that the Senate can take. The statutory faculty delegates authority to the Senate. Ultimately, the statutory faculty has an oversight role over the Senate. And even beyond that, the president, of course, has the oversight role for the entire university. And it's important to note with respect to all of this, at the end of the day, the president has veto power over the various types of actions that might be taken by the Senate. And we'll talk about how that process works. So yes, we've got this on screen. So there are three types of actions that can be taken by the Senate. Those are legislation, university policies, and resolutions. Legislation is limited to issues that relate, and this is language from the Constitution, relate to, quote, academic matters as commonly understood in higher education. The Senate with legislation should be focused on matters of academic importance. The committee decided not to try to define that in the Constitution because when we started trying to do that, it's very difficult to make a determination, and we decided to look to this concept that things that are commonly understood in higher education, looking at rules promulgated by the AAU and other organizations of that sort that have a sense of what it means to be academic. But the legislation is limited to academic matters, and we can think of examples that are and examples that aren't. If the Senate passes legislation, the legislation is sent to the president, and if the president doesn't act, then after the passage of a period of time, the legislation is considered enacted and it takes effect. If the president disagrees with the legislation, the president can ask the Senate to make changes, to modify, to change, or in fact to revoke that or undo the legislation, there's a better word for that, and attempt to reach a compromise through discussions with the Senate. If the compromise is not reached, if the Senate and the president can't reach an agreement on the proper construction of whatever that legislation is, then a meeting of the assembly will be called, and the assembly is a meeting of the statutory faculty. We'll talk about that definition in a minute. That will then have its own process for considering that legislation. The assembly process is a three-part process. There is an open meeting like this one at which the legislation will be discussed, and that is a discussion meeting only. A vote would not be taken at that meeting on the legislation. The only vote would be to change the motion that is before the assembly, but not to vote on the motion. After the discussion, the open discussion, there is an online discussion period of 2 weeks during which members of the faculty can post comments, can respond to comments, so that everyone is able to engage in that discussion, not only those people who are at the meeting. And then at the end of that period, there is an online voting process that lasts for 7 days to allow faculty members to vote on the matter being considered. The end of the online voting process, which is 7 days, unless some other period is needed for an emergency basis, but 7 days is would be the normal period. If the vote passes, then it goes back to the president, and the president can veto the vote if the president thinks that a veto is in the best interest of the university, or the president can choose to let the vote stand. Obviously, if the assembly votes against the legislation, then that's the end of that. The second type of action that the Senate might take are with respect to university policies. University policies are policies that govern the entire university. These are not policies that apply to one school, one college, one department, one unit. They are only policies that apply to the entire university and that require the president's approval. These policies can come from the Senate or they can come from the president. If they come from the Senate, from the president, they go to the Senate Executive Committee, which determines whether they should be considered by the Senate as a whole. If the Senate exec thinks that the policy doesn't require further discussion at the level of the Senate executive would let the president know, and at that point that policy would be approved. If the Senate needs to discuss the policy, it would go to the Senate for consideration, and if the Senate then expresses concern about that policy, the same process that I've already described with respect to legislation would apply. Once a university policy is approved by the Senate and by the president, so if it comes from the Senate, it has to be approved by the president as well. The policy is posted on the policy website, which already exists. There is a policy website that exists. The university policies are produced there on the website. Those are the policies that control various actions taken at the university, and that is the final word on what those policies state. I went back to look at that website yesterday just to see how many policies were posted, and one of the things I found, the policies there are policies that go back for as long as they could be found. The website is new, so they had to try to determine what the policies were and post those, but there was a list of the 10 most recently added policies or revised policies. So this list of 10 includes policies which were revised, and most of them are revisions rather than new policies. Over the last 12 months, there were 10 of these. So this level of policy, the university policy that the Senate might be taking action on, are the very highest level policies. They're not, this is not going to be a daily activity of the Senate. The third type of action the Senate might take is we call resolutions. The Senate can pass non-binding resolutions on any subject the Senate wants to do. Those will be sent to the president. If the president disagrees, the Constitution asks the president to come to the Senate and explain why the president will not be taking action that is consistent with that resolution. That is just an encouragement for the president to come to the Senate to have that conversation and for better understanding about why the president believes it is not in the best interest of the university to take action in response to the resolution. There is no need for a presidential veto because the resolution is non-binding. There is just the constitutional duty for the president to come and talk to the Senate. Two other things to mention with respect to changes that the Constitution makes, and then I think Professor Bonine has a few more comments before we turn to your comments. One has to do with the members of the statutory faculty. The statutory faculty is defined by law in the original charter of the university, and the Attorney General has said that this definition of faculty, the governance that is proposed in the faculty, is to be the faculty with an emphasis on instructional faculty. So in making the definition of who is considered as part of the statutory faculty, we focused on instructional faculty, and the definition that was in the 2010 Constitution is the same as that in this Constitution with one exception. We have included in this version the officers of administration who are tenured in an academic department. The thought was that these are folks who were teaching faculty. They have now taken some time to participate in administration, but they continue to hold tenure and should be considered part of the statutory faculty. That has been the custom here in the past, and we've added them. I wanted to note that non-tenure track officers of instruction are included within the statutory faculty, and non-tenure track officers of research are not. We did have a lot of trouble thinking through that distinction and felt that under the statutory laws and the charter which govern us, that was the right outcome. The other change that was made, and I think this may have been made in the May 2010 Constitution, it's certainly in this version, is that the NTTF faculty as a group have one senator, so they are represented in the Senate with a senator, and that is a change from at least prior to the 2010 Constitution. And the very last change has to do with the process of convening the Assembly. The Senate or the President, or both the Senate and the President acting together, can convene the Assembly. In addition, the Constitution provides a process for faculty to convene the Assembly through a petition process with a specified number of faculty members, and we can look at that more specifically if there are questions. Before we move to a motion, I want to check in with Professor Bonine and see if he has additional comments.
Thank you. I wanted to make a more general comment before we move to the motion and then start our discussion. And that is simply a comment about the process. Susan and others have been doing this for more than a year, putting things on the websites, putting different drafts on there, and so forth. And then I came into this more recently, perhaps because I keep seeing things that I think are going wrong in the university, and I keep wondering how we as faculty members can get a handle on those things. Some of them being, for example, policies that seem to float out of the administrative air from Johnson Hall and get put into effect for the entire university without a process of us being able to say, wait a minute, that's about us. Regulations. One regulation was proposed 1 year ago that would have defined a confined area of our campus as a free speech zone. There can be only one reason for defining the area around the EMU as a free speech zone, and that is to define every place else as a non-free speech zone. Those kinds of things are why it is so important, I think, that the administration, with a lot of discussion, a lot of, I'm sure, hallway discussion that we're not privy to, but nevertheless discussion back with us, has agreed under President Rivera's leadership that policy statements that are university-wide we should be able to look at them before they get adopted, and some delegated body, and in this case it's the Senate executive that we wrote in to be the one, will look at that and say, you know what, the faculty actually has a role here, so we're going to take it to the Senate. Or to say, you know, we don't care when you raise and lower the flag or who decides when it goes to half-staff. That's not our business. Go ahead. We're not going to take it to the Senate. And in addition, of course, there's other processes for other people saying, no, you really should take it. But we, up to this point, have had no method to do that. And that's a really important step forward in this Constitution. The other thing is I looked around the room here and I tried to count from up here, and I either have 140, because then Rob said, come on down to the floor. So I'm not sure who are all the statutory faculty, but it's either 140 or 160 or maybe 180. So what are we talking about? 10%, maybe 15, 17% of the faculty at this institution. I would be really upset if we voted for governor or president, and the only people who could vote were the ones who made it through a cold day to a certain place when they're busy. And instead we have in Oregon vote by mail. I think that's just an incredible advance. What we now will do with this new Constitution, if it's accepted, is vote by email. Well, not really, but vote by electronic voting. Vote by mail in the 21st century. And I think that's important. There were arguments, for example, well, should we only do vote by electronic? And then there was very strong and I think good arguments saying, no, we need to be able to meet like this. But meeting here is how you really hash out the issues, but we shouldn't disenfranchise those who couldn't come for whatever reasons, of classes or even illness. Instead, let them be part of this. And that's, I think, another huge advance in this Constitution. So I guess these are overall points of view. The details, obviously, we will discuss, answer questions, and if you want, we'll see what goes there. But I think it's important that the members of this administration have agreed with major steps toward allowing the Senate, which is mostly faculty, oversight when the administration develops these policies, that the new Constitution will allow a more participatory process than we've had, even in our fairly good May 2010 Constitution, through the electronic voting. And I feel, particularly with the events of the last 2 weeks, or if you would listen to the State Board, the events of the last 6 months, we just weren't paying attention. They assured us that we should have known they were about to fire our president. I think we're at a constitutional moment here. That is a moment when we can help cement shared governance into the University of Oregon's way of doing things. I realize we could examine this for more months, and there may be glitches in here, but we can remedy them with the new system that we set up, and that I think I think we have a major stride forward here, and we shouldn't lose this moment. That's my thoughts about it.
I move that the statutory faculty...
We're going to do questions and answers before we make a motion?
Yeah, we're going to do questions and answers next, yes. And before we do that, I would just like to thank the Internal Governance Committee, because this was a very extensive 18-month group process between Internal Governance Committee that was appointed through the President's office and through the upper administration, those forces working together to revise the Constitution. The members of the committee are David Dussault, Lundquist College of Business, Judy Eisen, Biology, as you know, Susan Gary, Law, Gordon Nagayama Hall, Psychology, Peter Keyes, AAA and former Senate President, Deb Olson, Education, Scott Pratt, Philosophy, Ann Teddards, Music and Dance, and former Senate President. As you know, John Bonine, Law, Nathan Tublitz, Biology, who's the current chair, David Hubin, Senior Assistant to the President, myself, and Paul Van Danklar, Physiology, who was the former chair, and Christopher Prosser, Executive Coordinator to the University Senate and Statutory Faculty Assembly. So we really owe all of these individuals quite a debt of gratitude for the very hard work they've done over an 18-month period. Also, I'd like to say that there has been an ample time for review. The first revision was posted in October 2011, and we stated our intention to convene this assembly at that time. And it's important to note that the new document is a revision of the Constitution that was ratified in May 2010. So it's as though we're building on a foundation. It's important to realize that. I believe it clarifies and strengthens the collaborative process of policymaking, which we haven't had to this extent before, and which will now become a central feature of our shared governance system. So without further ado, we welcome you to participate in a question and answer period. There's a microphone to the left, center, and right. Would anybody like to make a comment or ask a question? Please. Please identify yourself before you speak as well.
I'll try. Randy Sullivan with the Chemistry Department. As we move towards decentralized governing boards, it occurs to me that, first of all, thank you for all your hard work. It looks like a marvelous document, let me say that. As we move toward, There's one thing that I'm curious about. As we move towards institutional governing boards, it seems to me there is at least the possibility that oversight of the president from above, balance of power might be somewhat weakened. And I think that it might be important that there is a balance of power and accountability maintained from below. I noticed that there is no provision for a override of a presidential veto. Was that considered, and if so, what were your thoughts on it, pro and con?
You know, it's interesting that until now, or until recently, the practice has been that the only way to override a presidential veto is not this faculty. It's the chancellor. I wouldn't personally consider that to be my favorite place to reside, that kind of power. I think that when we do get, and I believe we will get, local governing boards, and we will, I think, work very hard to make them be real, not the thin gruel that the governance committee of the state board at present has been preparing in a document that would give us almost nothing. But the governor's statement that he really wanted to do this, I think we should take at face value. When we get that, we may need to reconfigure. I'm not willing right now to leave that, to have it be the state board. I'm actually willing to trust a president because the methodology here is not confrontational. It's collaborative in the sense that he can't just veto. He can veto, and then we go to the next step, and then he can veto again, and then we go to the next step. And it's about 3 steps down. So my way of saying is that under this Constitution, the only way the president can completely disagree with the faculty is veto, veto, veto. Now, I understand that could happen, but at the same time, what we will not ever be able to get, I am quite sure, is the power of the faculty to override the president. Because of the way that the state law is set up, because of the way the internal management directives are set up, and there are 3 state laws, one of which is ours, let's say, the university charter that said the governance, or the professors and president shall have the immediate government and discipline of the university. But then there's these other ones that talk about the president running the practical affairs and the state board having power. So in a real political world, and I think in a legal world, we could not say the president, that we have the final word. I would like that in many ways, although I can see arguments against it, but we can't do it. So I think when we get a new board, we'll have to talk as a community. Do we want to have somebody who can override the president, or do we want to have some other appeal process? But right now, going to the present board I don't think is beneficial, and I know we can't go to ourselves. That's my reaction.
Any other questions or comments, please?
Is this on? Yeah. Chris Sinclair, Mathematics. The question I have is, are future presidents going to be beholden to this document? And if not, why are we doing this now? And how will we go about making a new constitution if a future president decides they don't like the current one? I should say I support the document. I just want to bring this up. We might be doing a lot of work right now for something that might have to change in 9 months.
I have a pithy answer, a short and pithy answer. The same university charter that I read to you, saying that the faculty consisting of the professors and the president shall have the immediate government, does not say the president has the immediate government. The president cannot, I believe, come in and cancel the Constitution. Of course, if anybody did, that would be even a bigger thing than we experienced in the last 2 weeks, and people would be leaving in droves, and I don't know who we'd hire. But he can't do that. What happens is that, and Rob could perhaps talk to this more directly, but he can ask for a renegotiation. We can negotiate with the new president, and he may say, I can't live with this and that, but it's going to be a conversation between faculty and president, and it could even be part of the hiring process. If a president looks at this Constitution and says, I can't live in a university where the faculty has this much power, then I guess some state board could say, okay, you're exactly the kind of guy we want. Or some of us might say, they may think you're the right kind of guy, but it's not going to be very happy here, so maybe you should look elsewhere.
What the document does is it gives us a very strong foundation for interacting with the central administration. It clarifies and strengthens the May 2010 document in very significant ways, which Susan and John have explained. But I also want you to know that President LaRiviere has been active in meeting with the committee and discussing each of these very key points that are the focus of the major revisions. And this revised document was presented to him with a recommendation from his assistants to sign it, and he has signaled his definite interest in signing it. I would even say it's stronger than that, and is willing to make it one of the final acts of his presidency. So I think that says a lot about his confidence in the document, and also speaks to future presidents, because we would certainly want anyone who follows him to have the same courage and strength of conviction that he does. Please.
Thank you. So this is slightly meant in humor, because it's such
Please identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. Robert, I thought
Please.
my speech last week would speak for me. Robert Young, Planning, Public Policy and Management. So this is mostly meant in humor, but there's a bit of content to it, which is if we can't be assured that this document will be binding on future presidents, and if future presidents have the right to veto with no override, then could we amend the document so that it no longer reads the president, but rather says his or her excellency in the document?
Point taken. Please.
Andrew Marcus, Department of Geography. This document vests a fair bit of power in the Senate Executive Committee, particularly with regard to whether or not policies would be considered by the Senate or not. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to the nature of the makeup of that committee and how it would be appointed in the future.
So I couldn't completely hear you, the makeup of the Internal Governance Committee, or?
The Senate Exec.
The Senate Exec. Yeah, the Senate Exec is according to a broad set of guidelines which are currently posted on the Senate website, and all of the constituencies are represented. There are individuals who literally transfer from their position within each of their constituencies directly onto the Senate Executive Committee. So strong representation of all 5 constituencies. And then in addition, the Senate President may include other individuals. In this particular year, I have invited probably the largest number of individuals onto the Senate Executive Committee of any of the presidents, because we've been in such a state of crisis even before the firing of Richard. But the reason I've done it is to try to get a really wide representation and to try to encourage everyone to participate in this particular process that we're engaged in right now. However, in other years, when we hopefully don't have the same number of crises that have emerged this year, another president may have another view about that. So there may be fewer members beyond the ones that are prescribed. I can tell you that my belief is to include everybody at the table and as many people as we can within a certain number that can fit into a reasonably sized conference room. And I think we've achieved that. I feel that the Senate Exec is doing an excellent job. There's great communication among the constituencies and a strong commitment, especially to the search that we're about to undertake for the president. So I hope that answers your question, and you can see the specifics of that on the Senate website. If you go under committees, if you go committees A to Z, and then look at Senate Executive Committee, you can see who's on it. And in particular, we have increased the number of students this year, which I think is very important. We now have the ASUO president of the student body, Ben Eckstein, and that will probably remain the case for students. And also, we've recently added the president of the Student Senate. That I think is very strong, that those 2 individuals are part of the Senate Executive Committee too, because then there's communication between those individuals and their various roles. and within the Senate exec. It makes a very nice connection. Also, Miriam Bolton has joined Senate exec at my invitation. She's the chair of the OAC, the OA Council. And I'm hoping that we could revise the charge to always include the chair of the OA Council. And we'll be looking at some other fine-tunings as well. Any other questions? Oh, is there another comment? No. Please.
Deborah Healy, Linguistics. I like the revisions that you've put in here. I especially like being more clear about the types of actions that the Senate can take and where they go with the regulations and so on. In the previous version and in this one, I notice, as you mentioned before, that officers of research are not included. However, we have another large group of people who teach that seem to be non-persons, and these are adjuncts. What about them?
I think that the answer has two parts. One is the statutory and charter answer, and then the other is the maybe more directly university answer. From the charter answer, the charter vests the governance in the faculty, and faculty is defined by the Attorney General by looking at kind of understandings of what that means, to say that it's someone who has a primary role in teaching at the university. So we looked at the teaching as being a critical part of that, but not looking at it to mean that anyone who teaches a class has the role of as a faculty member at the university. So that's the way we interpreted that. I think from a university standpoint, or in what the committee considered, is that the statutory faculty should be people who have a long-term commitment to the school, which is not to say that every faculty member comes and spends his or her entire career here, but for whom their primary commitment is to the university, and that is then an important part of what they do.
Let me take a little exception to that. I think that many people, when they think of adjuncts, are thinking of the people who teach, say, one course a year, who come in, they're retired from their city job or whatever, they teach a 3 p.m. course or something. That's one type of adjunct, and I would agree that they aren't fully tied to the university. But a lot of undergraduate instruction, and certainly instruction at the American English Institute, is done by people who may be on 9-month contracts, just like career track, but who are classified as adjunct. They are teaching full-time. They are fully committed to the university. They probably spend more hours at the university than a lot of tenure track people. And they do not count as instructional people. Why is that?
If you look at the definition there of statutory faculty, it includes career non-tenure track officers of instruction.
That's not adjuncts.
No. Well, it's
That's me. I'm a career non-tenure track. That's not a lot of my colleagues who are adjuncts, who because of our needs at the AEI are now on full-time 9-month contracts.
I'd argue that this is something that's constrained by the Attorney General, that the whole reason we're going through this is we had a university assembly for like 30 years that included a wider range of constituencies on the campus than the Attorney General says we're allowed to have. And so the statutory faculty is this more narrowly legally defined group. However, as you'll notice, there's not a whole lot of us here. And it's considered that it's going to be fairly unusual to have statutory faculty meetings, so that really the direct governance of the university is vested in the Senate, which is much more broadly representational of everyone on campus.
Okay, no, I completely agree with that. I understand the difference between statutory faculty and university Senate representation. That was actually the basis of my question, because as I understand it, adjuncts basically are not represented by university faculty because they simply don't count as people here.
There may be other members of the governance committee who want to comment. I'll throw out another comment. I think that somebody who is called an adjunct, who has a career here, that needs to be changed those people, I've never quite understood who draws the line between NTTF and people who don't get to be called NTTF, but they really are non-tenure track career people. One solution to that is to write the Constitution and say anybody who, and then I guess you would either say anybody who ever teaches a course here, anybody who teaches a course every semester, anybody who teaches 2 courses every quarter, those things could be done. Another option is to put some pressure into redefining what NTTF means. I don't know the right answer, but I feel that if there is an issue here that really could be solved, this Constitution is amendable. And it's amendable, I think, in a better way than it has been until now. And so that's part of an answer. I don't know if it's satisfying, but that's sort of my reaction.
No, I think for me mostly it was to raise consciousness with the question. Thank you very much.
Oh, I would like to just respond briefly. First of all, I don't think we got your name, if you would like to give it.
Deborah Healy.
Thanks. In my view, this is a really important matter, crucial actually, and I would like to invite you or others to present a motion in the Senate for the consideration of this so that we could go forward on it. We need to define it and we need to look into it, so please do that. The Senate has the power to do these things, and I wish that everyone here would use the Senate in a way that will further, let's say, the excellence of the university, but also your own position within the university. We want you to participate. Thank you. Another question, please.
Hi, I'm Diane Baxter. Thanks for all your hard work. I'm in the Department of Anthropology. And this is sort of a follow-up to the last speaker, but if I understood from the presentation correctly, for non-tenure track faculty, the representation on the Faculty Senate is 1. Is that correct?
For ORs.
Excuse me?
NTTF.
Oh, NTTF.
Yeah. So
yes.
That is correct. So I'd like to object to that. Mm-hmm. Just like there's a wide variety of opinions for tenure track faculty, there's also a wide variety of opinions that are held by NTTFs. And since we make up quite a large percentage of the faculty here, it seems wrong to me that the representation on the Faculty Senate is limited to 1. So I would like to, I don't know how you do this, I don't know if motions can be made here or not, but I would like whoever considers this to think about having increased representation for NTTFs.
I think this is an important point, and again, I invite you and others, whoever would like to participate in this way, to bring this to the Senate. The reason being that...
That's what I thought I was doing.
Rob, actually, there's a clarification. So when I said yes, that it was 1, I was incorrect. The NTTF instructional faculty vote with their units. Because they are statutory faculty, the statutory faculty have among them 37 members. Those are divided up among the units. And so if there are, for example, we have NTTF instructional faculty in the law school, they vote for the law school senator as part of that, and they are represented with the other law professors. There is 1 senator for the NTTF research faculty. So that 1 senator represents the NTTF research faculty. The reason for that is that those folks are not members of the statutory faculty, and so that's to give representation to them because they are not otherwise represented.
So from what you've said, so my understanding of that would be is that there would, from each of the various constituencies, a CAS, the law school, journalism, etc., there could be 1 NTTF that would be on the no, that's incorrect?
Well, there could be multiple. So if in the law school we nominated somebody for our Senate position, we could every year have we have a number of NTTF instructional faculty in the law school who are valued members of our faculty, so they might very well serve on the Senate. There could be somebody from law, there could be somebody from I don't know, other units from CAS where there are other folks, and there are currently some number of folks in the Senate.
Senators who are NTG.
So there are people.
I'm really sorry. Is there then a limit on that number?
No.
There is not. Okay.
There's not a limit, but what I was saying before, and I didn't mean to be confusing in any way, is that if you have some objection to the representation, you can take it up with the Senate. This isn't a Senate meeting right now. I'm not trying to be difficult, but this is a faculty assembly, and it's a good thing that you're presenting this point. But we can consider it also at a Senate meeting, and also people can discuss representation and whether they feel they're adequately represented there, and I encourage you to do so.
Yeah, well, I feel better because I thought I heard it was only one. And so since that's incorrect, I don't, I feel better about it. Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you for your question. Appreciate it. Another? Please. Are there any who haven't spoken? Randy spoke before, and we encourage him to do it again, but is there anyone else?
So if I can double dip.
Okay. Please.
There was the question earlier about the executive committee, and it seemed to me you didn't mention, I thought I read that all the members are appointed by the incoming president.
No, that's not true.
I thought I read that.
Not at all. No.
How are they?
Well, there are certain ones that carry over from their positions as specified. So, for example, it would depend on the individual. In fact, I wonder if we can bring that up
can I
here.
see that again?
We've got it right here.
Read the.
I can't read it sideways here, so somebody else will have to do it. I'm afraid.
Okay, let me remember the membership defined by the U.S. Senate bylaws. The Senate Executive Committee shall minimally consist of the Senate President, the Chair, the Senate Vice President, the immediate past Senate President, the Chair of the Academic Council, 3 tenure-related faculty senators, 1 officer of administration senator, 1 non-tenure track faculty senator, 1 classified staff senator, the officer of research senator, 1 student senator, and the ASUO president or designee. The Senate President may appoint additional members, including outside faculty, to serve on this committee. The incoming president shall appoint all members to this committee, and their terms of office will be 1 year.
The incoming Senate President shall appoint all members to this committee.
But
Right.
according to that?
According to those rules.
Yes,
right,
according to those rules.
Yeah, that's what I said. The President appoints, the incoming President
Okay.
appoints all of them. They have to be from their particular categories.
Right. In other words,
But you get to pick who they are.
That's right. It's a balance between prescribed.
And I agree. In response to the previous question about that, I think it's an important thing to point out that the president's power is quite extensive in determining the membership of that committee. I personally think that's a good thing because I think that the nature of faculty is sometimes we need some strong leadership, and I'm not normally on that side. But I do want to mention to the folks that are voting for president, vote very carefully because they will have the power to appoint the executive committee, which is, as we have pointed out, is a fairly powerful committee now. So think about it when you vote for president because they may be determining which policies get kicked to us for consideration and which don't.
Right. Just a second. My parliamentarian here is pulling on my sleeve. We just need a ruling from him, or rather an advice on a ruling. He's reminding me that the Senate Executive Committee does not have the power to make a binding vote, but it advises me as president, and then I interact with the Senate. So,
but under this new Constitution, you'll be determining which policies get kicked down to us for consideration. Of course, we can always make a motion to consider them anyways.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly right. Do you want to make a comment, John?
No, that was
okay. Good. Yeah. That was the comment John was going to make.
So again, I say vote very carefully for president.
Yeah, we definitely will. So,
which luckily we have a very good president.
So we would now like to ask for a motion to adopt.
I move that the statutory faculty adopt the revised Constitution of the University of Oregon dated December 6, 2011.
And second. Thank you. We now have the option for further discussion, if you wish. Further discussion, please.
Just wondering, do we have a quorum
Identification, please.
No, Washington from mathematics.
Please.
Just wondering, we have enough people here for formal quorum?
Yes, we have enough, and there's not a need for a quorum by the May Constitution, so that's not an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Paul Engelking, Chemistry. Our Senate has not been very contentious recently, except to outside forces. But I was once serving on the Senate and Senate President, where actually it did come down to deciding whether or not we had not only a quorum, but also counting very carefully the vote. I would like to offer an amendment to the section on the quorum. Right now, the present Constitution just specifies a majority of the Senate members. However, the language has been changed to a half plus one. That's a term of art in the law that's usually recognized in the British Commonwealth, but not necessarily in the United States. And it can lead to confusion, and Robert's Rules of Order, the 11th edition, actually points out that it's preferable just to use the term majority rather than the other term of art. So if I may, I'd like to offer a amendment to that.
Which section?
So I have it on a stick here.
Which, do you have the section number?
Yeah, I think it's, actually it's in my thing here. I think it's either 8 or 4.
Are you talking about the quorum for the Senate or for the Assembly?
For the Senate.
Senate, okay.
What's the section number?
Here it is, 8.4.
8.4. Quorum.
See, let me give you the stick.
Yep, plus one, okay. So he wants to make it what?
A majority.
That's it.
So 8.4.
How would you?
Okay.
Can you go back to and explain the difference again between a majority and?
John has asked Paul to describe the difference between a majority and.
I don't think it changes it, does it?
Okay.
Please.
The terminology is the quorum requirement remains half plus one of the prescribing membership, even if some of the University Senate positions are unfulfilled. The second part of that line is not problematic. The first part can lead to problems. Let's say you had a body of 3 members, just to reduce it to the most simplistic form. If you take a half of that, that's 1.5, plus 1 makes 2.5. So you need all 3 to agree, right? Okay. However, the intent was only 2. So a majority is understood by everyone as more than half. However, the half plus 1, it causes problems. It goes all the way back to about the 12th century when people only understood integer arithmetic and did division by leaving a remainder. So one possibility is just to change that to a majority.
I would consider that as a friendly amendment because I think a majority is more clear. I'm looking at members of the committee. Is that agreeable? So we'll take that as a friendly amendment to change.
The second has to accept it also, whoever seconded.
The second, please. Yes.
Could I just comment that, Paul, I didn't know you were in the mathematics department. I thought you were chemistry.
I am in chemistry, but I am afraid that we might have the discrete mathematicians and the continuous mathematicians arguing on the floor of the Senate. So.
Thank you. And It is in without a vote because it is accepted as a friendly amendment. Thank you so much for that point. Any other discussion? Would anybody else like to make a point or comment?
Call the question.
So I'd like to call the question. Vote on the motion. Have a motion, please. Second.
That's it. If there's no objection.
All in.
Now you have to get the vote for the motion.
Yes, we need the vote for the motion first, of course. So all in favor of the, making the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstain. And now all in favor of the revised Constitution, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstain. The revised Constitution is so ratified.
Make your last remarks, the people are leaving.
And just as one last set of remarks, I would like to remind you what I said at the opening of this meeting, which is to say that beyond anything, we have to remember in this new era that begins today on the foundation of this revised Constitution and will continue when our interim is named this week. We stand with each other. Let's keep that principle foremost in our minds and hearts, and if we do, we cannot fail. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Nays? Abstains? Oh, I knew you wouldn't do that. This meeting is now formally adjourned.